Well, I'm joined now by Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons. And what an historic day that was yesterday in Parliament, Lindsay, with President Zelensky giving that address to Parliament. You obviously played a huge role in hosting him and introducing him. Now the dust has settled a little bit. Tell us about your reflections of yesterday.
What a moving moment. To be in the most historical part of Parliament, that's Westminster Hall, almost 1,000 years of history, yet we created new history yesterday. A man, a leader, a man who came from the front line of his country, defending his country, to come to Parliament, to express what is happening. The Parliament was at its best when both houses came. They were in awe of this person before them, President Zelensky, telling them the facts, telling them the truth about the aggression of Russia, and the fact he was appealing for support, because this is the front line of democracy within Europe that's being challenged. And that's why it was silent until he came in. And then it was like a football crowd that suddenly woke up to what was a goal that had gone in the net, because people just couldn't believe this man was here before us and telling us exactly what it's like in a war in Europe.
And I see you've got the helmet of a Ukrainian fighter pilot next to you that he handed to you in the middle of that address. Tell me about that moment in particular.
I wasn't suddenly expecting it. They said, and we've got the white helmet, we want to present it to you, Mr. Speaker. They just said to me, just as I was about to sit down. And I've got to say, I was in awe to be given such an important piece of Ukraine. The fact that this is the helmet of the ghost pilot that has troubled the Russians so much, they haven't been able to find him, and he's been taken down Russian planes after planes. The fact is, this was a clear message. This is how we were successful. And of course, they need to win this war. And he said, we will win it, but we need more. And others will take that away. But it was a very clear message, whether it was this country yesterday, whether it was France later. The message was very clear. Thank you for what you've given us so far, but to win, we need that bit extra.
And can I draw you on whether you support that call for the UK, the West, to supply new fighter jets to Ukraine?
What I would always do is support Parliament, and Parliament will take decisions. I am there to make sure Parliament, we will keep alive, and my job is to make sure we do not forget about Ukraine. We're almost 12 months on, and part of what I've always done is to remind people about a war that goes on and continues. And others will take that decision, because quite rightly, this is about supplying the front line, and people will supply what is needed to ensure for victory. I'm sure of that. But as I say, others will decide that. And of course, I do represent Lancashire, which builds the best aircraft in the world. So, let's leave it at that.
You have a slight vested interest there, perhaps. Tell me, where will the helmet sit now? Will it be on presentation in your office, more widely in the public area of Parliament?
It's going to go in Speaker's House, and it will go on display with some of the other items and gifts that the House has been given. And this is quite rightly, this is a symbol of hope. This is a symbol of hope to the people of Ukraine. And it is a reminder for those within Parliament. So yes, it'll go on display. Who knows, it may even go on display in Chorley as well.
Ah, interesting. Have you tried it on?
I'm frightened to death of not being able to get it off. Some might say it's a good idea. And it's suggested to me, maybe I ought to wear it at Prime Minister's Questions.
Well, it would be quite a look instead of the traditional speaker's wig that used to be worn. Lindsay, you made clear yesterday in your address that this isn't the first time that you've met President Zelensky. You hosted him for tea a couple of years ago. What's he like as a man when he's not at the podium? What's he like privately? And did you detect a change in him between your two meetings?
It's interesting, isn't it, in 2020 when he came, and when this was just the beginning of a pandemic, or what we weren't quite sure what the pandemic was, how it was going to, what was going to happen to the world at that time. But we had a meeting, and it's interesting, isn't it? Here we have a new president and a new speaker. Who wants to meet a new president? I suppose who wants to meet a new speaker? So we were perfectly matched to meet each other. And that's what, he came, we sat down, we had afternoon tea. It was a very interesting meeting. The talk was about how can we build better relationships? What about trade between two countries? It wasn't about weapons, nothing like that. This was about pure trade. How can we support each other? A lot of people from the Ukraine had settled over the years after the Second World War in this country, with major enclaves of Ukraine people. And therefore, it was about the diaspora within the United Kingdom, talking about that, talking about trade, and a very pleasant and jolly meeting, which was good, and giving him the benefit of a chorley cake within his afternoon tea. This is what, this was about me being a new speaker, him being a new president, us meeting together. Little did I know how that very early meeting and friendship would lead to where we are today. And what it's been about is when to Parliament, for the first time ever, that anybody had addressed Parliament in the United Kingdom. Yes, it may have been on screen, but the fact is that was unique. And people said, oh, you can't do that. I said, yes, we can. We want to hear what is happening. This was soon after the war had started. This was his request for support. And from there, his wife came to visit. We've had the ambassador, different people. And when Madam Zelensky came to Parliament, she brought the exhibition, the photographs. We can talk about things, but to see it in Parliament on display, the atrocities that have been carried out against the people of Ukraine, that takes me right back to when our original friendship started and how that friendship has developed, but also the needs and the requests are completely miles from where I started in my first meeting. And what I want to do is ensure that we don't forget. It's almost 12 months on, and it's very easy and end up being a forgotten war. We can't afford that. This is the front line of Europe. This is defence of democracy. This is defence of the sovereign rights of the people of Ukraine. If you give up now, who is next? Is it Poland? Who knows? And that's what worries me.
Well, I think you've done a good job keeping it in the forefront, certainly, of parliamentarians' minds with the visit yesterday. It must have been a huge logistical and security challenge organising this trip, and you and the parliamentary authorities...
Right, you're in the studio.
Forgive me. And you have done a great job in keeping that secret. How long had it been in the pipeline?
Well, from our point of view, we were going to hint something might happen. We didn't know what, and we hadn't got a clue. On Monday, our head of security had taken complete control. And they said, things are going to happen. There will be this visit on Wednesday. It is the tightest security we've ever put in place in my time, and certainly for the House. And it was so limited. The fact that there was no chairs in Westminster Hall, we couldn't even organise chairs to be put out in case it gave away that something big was happening in Parliament. So that's how tight the security was. It was very tight. Our head of security was in complete charge, working with others around to make sure this happened. It came together and it was delivered very well, and that was what was so important to us. And, I've got to say, nothing went wrong, and that's always my worry. We got through it, we delivered, and quite rightly, people may have had to stand up, but I think anybody who was in that hall knew it was worthwhile. It was that moment in time when you can say, actually, I was there. It's something you will never forget.
Well, I was there, and it's certainly something I will never forget. I will be telling my grandchildren about it, I'm sure. So how many people knew about it? Only knew as recently as Monday. How tight was that team kept?
Very, very tight. In fact, we had to apologise to my office because we couldn't share it with the office either. We couldn't share it with ministers, secretary of states. It really was that tight. And obviously it was the right thing to do.
And just a few other questions then. You're very busy at the moment, but are there any other big pipelines, big visits in the pipeline?
The one thing is I want to get today over so we can have a small recess where members can go away. And hopefully then let's have a bit of downtime before they come back. And you're right. I've got one big thing to come. The one big thing for the country, of course, is the coronation.
Of course it is. And just finally, two areas I just want to touch on. One is disciplinary, the other is the physical building. I know at the end of last year, a consultation was started on this idea of precautionary exclusion for MPs. That could potentially involve restricting the access for MPs from Parliament, from the estate and from parliamentary travel if there are substantial allegations of violent or sexual assaults against them. Where are we at with that consultation?
That will be for the House to decide, because every member has the right to come into the House. The House will have to change and will have to vote on certain decisions. They will come as soon as they're ready to be put before the House. That is what I would expect. We are waiting for reports. I am taking evidence at the moment. Reports will be produced. I would expect that report, and I don't like prejudging the outcomes. What I would say is I think options will be given to the House for the House to vote on, and the House will make the decision.
Do you have a particular view about the issue?
I think it will be wrong, as I'm taking the evidence to actually prejudge the evidence I'm being given. So, no, I wouldn't say that. I may have a private view, but I wouldn't be willing to share it.
Okay, and just finally, Lindsay, restoration and renewal of the House of Commons. A parliamentary committee has warned that it could be costing taxpayers an extra £2 million every week that is delayed from the crumbling estate undergoing a programme of restoration or renewal. Do you want to see the House get on with that?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Everyone says this. We are getting on with it. Because while the House is dithering and talking about things, I'm getting on with contracts. We've done the cast iron roofs, we're now doing the flat roofs, we're doing the Northern Estate, we've done the Elizabeth Tower, which everybody says, isn't it magnificent? Tourists are in awe again at seeing what they call Big Ben, what we call the Queen Elizabeth Tower. It's magnificent. So yes, we've got to get on with the work, rather than dithering and letting all the conversations go on. I'm making decisions to get that work done now. Yes, major decisions come, but in the meantime, I'm not standing still. I'm getting on with that work. And wherever we can save money, we must save money.